Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. BlueCross and BlueShield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Recent dialogue around our region's unemployment rate suggests, and in fact points to, what is referred to as the workforce skills gap as being one of the most prominent barriers to lower rates of the unemployed. Hello, I'm Chris William. Happy holidays and welcome again to the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy dialogue. Without doubt, education and funding are front and center to this issue on why this jobless rate is not falling further, but in fact going up. But as we close in on the end of 2015 and the holiday season, what other issues matter most and fit into that dialogue as well? Well, we will start this week's dialogue and discussion in just a moment.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by BlueCross and BlueShield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Katherine Swartz Hilton, Director of the Center for Leadership, Columbia College. Mike Walden, Reynolds Distinguished Professor at NC State University. And special guest, Katie Belk Morris, Board Chair of the Belk Foundation. Here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Happy holidays. Michael, welcome back. Katherine, good to have you here.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Try not to make it too painful for you. Michael, I want to start with you. Certainly an economist and have your pulse on what's going on in the economy. But you know, one thing about this unemployment rate, Mike, especially in North Carolina and in South Carolina. South Carolina and North Carolina unemployment rate have kind of tracked similar, but there's been a bump up.
Right.
Not just a month, but the past few months. The unemployment rate has trended higher in North Carolina since the first quarter of this year. Some say that it's a participation rate, more people coming back into looking for a job. But a lot of folks have said, you know, this is something we've been talking about, this workforce skills gap, that we can't find talent. Of the folks that are looking for a job, they don't have the talent,
right,
or the talent bench is not there. What do you say?
I say that's true. And in just 8 years, I think we're really in a different economy. You're absolutely right that there are people who are unemployed who probably don't have a good chance of getting employed because they don't have the right skills, especially in rural areas where educational attainment is much lower. You overlay that, Chris, with the fact that technology is increasingly getting into the workplace and taking the jobs that people, especially with lower skills, used to have. So I think we have those two things going on, which I think all speaks to the importance of education and retraining and reskilling.
Well, but let me tweet something out there. You said that technology is taking some of those jobs. That's not a new revelation, Michael. Isn't that been the case though for a while now?
It is not new, but I think it's accelerating. That's what a lot of the folks who really put their finger on that and watch that closely. Technology and the ability of technology to do things that individuals couldn't do or had to do in the past. We've got artificial intelligence. We have the ability of computers to analyze large data sets. Just one quick example, Chris. Law firms now can install computer programs that do all of their case work for them rather than having paralegals. That's an example of something that's just occurred in the last couple of years.
Katherine, as an academic, I know you've got an opinion about this. Is it the workforce skills gap? Is that a major dynamic in the unemployment rate?
I mean, I definitely think there is a skills gap, but as a liberal arts college, we really believe in the value of the liberal arts education and being able to apply that those foundational skills that you're going to learn at our college or other colleges, maybe no matter what specialty you end up pursuing as a career. So we really believe in that and its value in the workplace. And I think what we hear from employers is They're looking for development and refinement of soft skills, which I like to call hard skills. Leadership ability and the ability to communicate your idea, push ideas forward, being innovative and learning to be disruptive within a workplace or within a company. And so those are the things that we're trying to instill in our students and make sure that they get applied experiences to test out careers while they're at the college.
And I think that's crucial, Chris, because we've had a debate, I'm sure you followed, in North Carolina with some saying that we need our colleges to be more job-focused, occupation-focused, and many in the liberal arts have said, oh, that's leaving us out. I think actually having a humanities liberal arts background where you can think critically, where you can adjust to changes, disruptions, as Katherine said, I think that's going to be crucial, because if you can program and code any kind of activity, that's going to be done by technology in the future. So I really think that turning out individuals who can think critically, can work on interpersonal relations, which computers can't yet do. That's really where I think the focus needs to be.
You know, that's interesting. So we've got two academics. We've got liberal arts, and then we've got the NC State, which many will think that it's the center of the universe for STEM and STEM learning, which probably not too far off of that. But so, Katherine, back to you. When you sit next to an academic at a highly technical school, like NC State, how, again, explain how a liberal arts, how the softer sciences have thinking about the humanities in a different way. How does that work? How does that compare and contrast to what NC State does?
Well, I mean, I think that the education that you're going to get at both institutions is going to lead you to success regardless. So hard to contrast. But what I would say is some of the requirements that we have of all students must take advanced business writing, advanced communications. All students leave our college with foundational business acumen skills. Being a women's college, every student, every leadership position, formal position is held by a woman. So in a women's college, students are able to practice leadership differently than they are in a larger co-educational institution. And so that's something that makes us unique, because students see and live and breathe leadership and learning to lead themselves and lead teams and lead others. And we know that that's an important skill in the workplace and in the community in order to just move our communities and our states forward. So that is maybe how I see us contrasting from an institution like NC State. But again, I do think the value of the degrees are completely comparable.
We got about 3 minutes before we bring our guests on. I want to get to a couple critical current issues. Michael, many have said that the calculus about the use and the cost of energy has changed. Do you see this as a secular change? And I'm not just talking about the cost of oil, but the way that we consume it, the way we apply it, and the way that we compute it. Is this a new world?
It is a new world, and I think we will continue to enjoy relatively low prices. I think the other thing, though, Chris, we need to do in energy, North Carolina is expected to add 3.5 million more people by mid-century. The other thing we have to do in energy is continue to improve efficiency, and we have been doing that, so we don't have to build more power plants. And we have seen that happen in North Carolina. We need to push that forward. So I think the two go together, lower prices, but we really need to work on pushing that efficiency paradigm.
Do you think the North Carolina General Assembly has made some strides in that they did not renew the solar tax credits at the end of this year? They sunset at the end of this year. Is this going to undercut an industry that was set up a few years ago with this?
I don't think so, because I think that improvements in making solar more cost competitive on its own. In fact, there's a new report from the U.S. Department of Energy that shows that increasingly solar, even without the credits, is moving toward cost competitiveness. So I think solar is going to be a bigger part of our energy portfolio.
Katherine, just quick, let's talk about leadership for a second from the Columbia College perspective. So leadership, women's leadership. When I hear about women in business and women in leadership, you can't help but draw comparisons to what's now being called in corporate circles D&I, diversity and inclusion. What is the difference between women's issues and D&I initiatives?
For me, neither. I think it kind of all falls in the same bucket in terms of the corporate initiatives, because the effort to engage different kinds of people, move them up from within corporate structures, or even in community efforts, the things that need to happen are one and the same. So for me, I appreciate companies that are rolling that together. That said, it's important that companies and organizations and communities probably set goals. I believe with regards to engaging women specifically, I think that that's a huge area for improvement in the corporate sector. And you're seeing companies that actually declare those goals becoming successful with having more women push through the pipeline and becoming, established leaders within the company.
Would you expect, just very quickly in about 30 seconds, would you expect that the defining line between women and women's organizations and more kind of broken out, traditionally focus on women conferences and leadership, would that line between diversity and inclusion and separate women's issues become less and less?
So, being a single gender institution, I believe in the value of that single gender learning environment. So women getting together for something like you mentioned, conferences, that's important. But it's also important for us to integrate ourselves into lots of other circles to be able to advance ourselves. So women take, responsibility themselves in terms of advancing their career and propelling themselves into leadership positions. So there's space, and it's important that there's both kind of happening at the same time.
Okay, thank you guys. Stay with us, please. Next week on our program, in the next few weeks, it's about public policy. It's about the application of some of the new laws in place, and it's certainly about political leadership. Coming up on our program, he is the junior senator from North Carolina, former Speaker of the House in North Carolina. Tom Tillis will be our guest coming up soon. And then also from South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District, made some headlines a couple years ago during the President's State of the Union address, but many had said that was misaligned. Joe Wilson is a much more thoughtful guy than he's being made out to be, but either way, we'll find out. Congressman Joe Wilson will be here from South Carolina. Earlier this year, the historic sale of the Carolina organization Belk certainly marks another significant event in the arc of our evolving New South, no doubt. While the function of Belk has always been retail sales, it is so much more than simple profiteering. The 300 stores, the over 27,000 employees, the countless communities in which they exist have been indivisible and codependent for more than 125 years. So, now what? Enter the Belk Foundation. With the sale of the corporate, is it now time to focus on the philanthropic? And will the Belk Foundation become more overt, if you will? Joining us now is the 3rd-generation family member in the business, the chair of the Belk Foundation. We welcome Katie Belk Morris. Madam Chair, welcome to the program.
Hey, Chris, thank you. Glad to be here.
Katie, I'm not going to ask you about the sale of the stores. It's still pending, and there are a lot of signatures to be had. But as 127 years of Belk corporate changes for sure, is it time now for the philanthropic efforts to come to the forefront? How do you feel about the sale when it comes to this particular issue?
Well, I think that we will continue being just as interested in philanthropy and the certain issues, especially education, that the foundation has always cared about. I think that we will ramp that up because we will have more family members that have more time to spend on that. But I think that Tim Belk will continue to be the CEO of Belk, and he will be very busy doing that. So he does serve on the Belk Foundation board, but we think he'll continue in his role with the company. I don't think the foundation will increase in asset size as a result of the sale, but we're very fortunate. We have an endowment that's been built over many years, and so we are in a very good position to continue our investments. And we certainly think that we'll use our voice, we'll use our resources as much as we can to advance education in North Carolina.
So what do you want to do differently now? What has changed at the foundation when it comes to the corpus of this idea around education? What do you want to hope to achieve in 5 and 10 years?
Well, in the last couple years, we have really honed our education focus, and we're really interested in investing in 2 areas right now. One is kindergarten to 3rd grade achievement, believing that early efforts in education really do pay off for the long run. And the other is great teachers and leaders. And great teachers and leaders, we think about it as recruiting teachers, we think about it as developing teachers, and we think about it as retaining teachers. I think research is pretty clear that the teacher is the #1 influence on a child's academic performance and their success in school. So that's really how we picked those two areas, and we're going to try to work harder in those areas. We're going to try to work to scale more opportunities, to work more collaboratively. We've just done an effort in Charlotte called Read Charlotte, where we convened community leaders to come together and to look at systems change. We've got to do things differently in education. It's a big time of change, and we want to be a part of that change.
Yeah, I know we want to drill down in a couple of these, but Michael, go ahead, question.
And I think what you're doing is absolutely crucial. The question I have is, if you look at the education literature, you see some people saying that it's teachers are crucial, as you said. We have to pay more teachers more. We have to have them have master's degrees. Others say it's technology. Some say it's arranging classes differently. I saw a report this morning that some schools are having children stand up desk, and they've seen an increase in test scores. Are you in part trying to look at these various kinds of recommendations, knowing that a school only has limited money, they can't do everything, and trying to assess which one works best for North and South Carolina?
Yes, we certainly are. As I said, it's a time of change, and we've got to try things that are new and innovative. And I think the way I think about education, and I've learned this over time, it's not a simple issue or a simple problem, and it's going to take all of these things. It's going to take all of these things working together and aligned in the same direction for us to get real change in our students.
But is one of your goals to see which maybe two work best? Would you like to have a conclusion saying schools implement these two ideas and you'll see a big payoff?
You know, I can't say that I think it's going to be two ideas.
Okay.
I think it's going to be many ideas, and we're going to have to work at them all at the same time. And it's going to be hard work. It's not going to be as simple as two things work and make a difference. I wish it was. I think if it was, we would have solved it by now, because in North Carolina and South Carolina, across the nation, we have a lot of really smart people working really hard to close the achievement gap, to make our system work as well as it can. And we still have a lot of room for improvement, a lot of opportunities. So I think it's going to be lots of things. I don't know which things in particular. We do pilot different ideas. We believe it's really important to try things out and then change if they don't work. And that's another thing that's hard about education, is that it's long-term work. You can't get in it and then say, okay, this didn't work, we're ready to quit. I think that's been one of our problems over the long run, is that we try an idea out, it doesn't work, we quit, and then we come back with the next hot idea. And it's going to take lots of people working together, sharing what's working, adopting, changing, and it's long term, so we can't quit on things. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Katherine?
Right. I was thinking about in the college environment, we talk a lot about the 4-year cycle. So as you try new things, then it's a 4-year cycle to see kind of what results that produces. And in K through 12, it's a 13-year or even longer cycle to see the results of the pilots. But you mentioned pilots. Are there any early indicators of any, like one special project that you're working with right now that you think has a good chance for success?
Well, I'll tell you one project that we're working with is Project Lift in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. And Project Lift is a feeder pattern of schools that feed into West Charlotte High School, which has been the lowest graduation rate in the Charlotte Mecklenburg system. One of the things that we've seen there has to do with the way they use teachers and leaders, and they call it opportunity culture. The state is looking at a similar model, and they call it career ladders for teachers. And this is a way to extend the reach of excellent teachers and have them affect more students, with this idea that we want an excellent teacher in every classroom every year. And so what opportunity culture does also is allow excellent teachers to teach more students. It allows them to advance in their career because they have a different position than the classroom teacher that they had earlier. They also are able to coach other adults, coach other teachers, and they get additional pay for that. So we think this is a really promising innovation that Charlotte-Mecklenburg is testing out. It's shown great results in Project Lift. Ranson Middle School is a school that has really embraced this opportunity culture, and they were, with the latest results that we got, end of grade testing, Ransom was one of the top growth schools in the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
Is that, you know, the sustainable cost of the teacher pay has always been the issue, and I know that's come up in Project Lift. Katie, how do we figure out a good calculus to, well, let me ask you this question. If we could magically increase teacher pay to the most competitive rate in the nation, would that fix half of our problem?
Well, teacher pay is important. But teacher pay, research is telling us teacher pay is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that teachers are able to work for a great leader. And that's why principals are so important in this mix. And when we say we are investing in teachers and leaders, by leader we mean the principal. One of the top jobs of any superintendent of a district is to find a great principal for every school. Mm-hmm. If you have a great principal, you will attract great teachers. And teachers want to work, just like anybody in any job, we want to work for somebody that we admire, somebody that pushes us but supports us. And so that's why a principal is very important. I don't want to diminish the idea of pay, because that certainly is important, and it's important over the long run. We don't want our teachers to have to work two jobs. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes at Belk we say some of our best employees are teachers. They have great training. And that's, you know, kind of a sad statement, I think. When I first heard that, I didn't really like that. Teachers need a second job often, and that's not fair for something that we deem to be so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Michael.
Katie, research also shows that it's not only what happens in the classroom, but it's what happened with the student in their family, mm-hmm. in their neighborhood, and we have many students coming from challenging families, challenging neighborhoods. How does that fit into your mix?
Well, of course, that's very important, and you know, that is one of the issues that is really tough in education mm-hmm. now. We are really focused on student achievement in the classroom. So the Belk Foundation, we don't get as involved in these wraparound services. That's not to say that they're not very important. It's just to say that we have to focus and use our dollars where we think they can best be used. But certainly schools are very engaged in how they support their students outside of the actual teaching. And really, I think we ask our teachers to do as much of that work as they can. And that, I think, is one of the elements that makes the teacher so important to a child's success, because the great teacher really is in there knowing everything about that child. And the great teacher knows if that child had something really rough happen at their house mm-hmm. that night. The great teacher calls the parents, talks to the parents, works really hard to connect with the parents, even if the parents don't want to be connected with. And I think that's one of the elements of a great teacher.
We've got about a minute left, Katherine, so I'm going to ask her a quick follow-up. Sure. So, Katie, you've as you talk about these issues around education, clearly being politically savvy and certainly politically rigorous is going to come to the forefront here. How do you, in about 30 seconds, have you had to think more politically about this as you become more engaged in the education dialogue?
Yes, we have.
God bless you.
Politics is important. Public policy is important. And we've had to connect with our senators, with our legislators. And, you know, as a foundation, we do not lobby for any particular laws, but we lobby for, or we talk to policymakers about issues is what we really do.
So you educate, and there's more to come. Ran out of time, but will you come back? Because this clearly has become a bigger and bigger issue, and will. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Nice to have you.
Thanks.
Good to see you. Thank you. Katherine, welcome from Columbia. I'm glad the flood waters had receded and you guys are getting back to normal in the Midlands. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Michael, as always, thanks for being here. Good
Thanks,
to see
Chris.
you. Thank you for watching our program. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. BlueCross and BlueShield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. BlueCross and BlueShield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.